food service market is always talked about as having huge growth potential, and undoubtedly it has grown substantially over the last 20 or 30 years, but it's still not growing at a fast rate. We're talking typically in real terms market growing at 1 or 2%, maybe eating slowly into the retail market, but just nibbling at the edges. The total amount spent on food and drink, excluding booze in pubs, eating out accounts for 31% of that. When it comes to the share that fresh produce has of the market, it's got a good chance of expanding better than average. That's not to imply that it's going to skyrocket out of all proportion. The food service market is fragmented. We estimate that there are something like 180,000 different buying points within the industry out of a total of 260,000 outlets. The opportunity for consolidation exists, undoubtedly. So the big players are getting bigger, but not in leaps and bounds. It's small incremental changes. So anybody supplying the industry has got to come to terms with the fact that opportunities will always be amongst a large number of fragmented buyers. The implication of the fragmentation is that inevitably suppliers to the market, whether they are big suppliers or small suppliers, naturally get drawn to the large companies. And there are a dozen, 2 dozen large companies within the total food service sector that are relatively easy to identify. Companies like Compass, like Sodexo, or like McDonald's. Consequently, there's a lot of competition for their business, so it's low margin stuff. I think it's a mistake for any company to say, well, we're going to try and sell to the food service market, anybody in that market. Inevitably, companies should concentrate on sectors or regions or particular parts of the market that they know well. Another element of understanding the food service market is that it's slower than retail. It's slower to take products on. It's slower to show that a particular product is going to grow and is going to expand. That there's a slow burn process in food service. In an average year, we eat about 9 billion meals out of home. I don't know what proportion of those include fresh fruit and veg, but I would imagine it's a very, very small proportion. Produce generally in food service is potatoes, particularly chips, and then the rest to a very large degree. So if we're just talking about the rest, the products get used, I suppose, in 2 ways. One as an ingredient and one as a fully formed product. The consumer is the consumer, whether they buy the food from a retail shop or whether they buy it when they're eating out or at school or whatever. So they're going to be subject to the same pressures about 5 a day or healthy eating generally, or government pressure, no matter where they eat out. So if the government pressures are working in the retail market, they will work also in food service. One negative aspect has been the Jamie Oliver effect as far as school meals are concerned. The television programme last summer, which drew attention to the quality of school food generally, and not the produce part of it, I admit, has had quite a dramatic impact on the amount of food that children are eating at school. The food service operators have the moral responsibility, but they have a commercial imperative to sell what the customers want. So the extent to which they decide that they're going to promote fruit and veg off their own bat is going to be limited. I think the major pressure should come from the people who have the most to gain, which is the fruit and veg suppliers. And I really think that the government should take much more responsibility for making sure that it understands what the whole food service market is about, what the potential is, and how it interacts with both how consumers consume and also its relationship with the retail market. And until they do, they're not really going to be in a position to influence very much in the marketplace.